Hello everyone, welcome to Make Poland Great Again. My name is Ivan Belostenko. We are the voice of biblical, Christian, patriotic Christians from Poland. Today in our show, as always, we are joined by our guests, Pastor Paweł Chojecki.
Hello.
Olgierd, our guest from Texas, USA, Olgierd Kaltenberg. And the daughter of Pastor Paweł Chojecki, Eunika Chojecka.
Hello.
So today we would like to maybe give you a quick summary of our recent action that we did about the Smolensk petition that we've done towards Donald Trump, urging him to launch an international investigation into the Smolensk crash of 2010. And we'll give you a quick summary of what happened, why we did the petition, just repeat it again, though we mentioned in the previous programs, and also talk about what have been happening in Poland during this month that we were doing this petition, how how the media in general, I think it was media across the board, reacted to our petition, what they did and what they didn't do. And also, so we'll talk about that. So I think I would like to start with this tweet that we have published today, which it's sort of like an overview of the timeline from the moment the crash happened in Smolensk up to today, to our time today. And the article that John Schindler wrote recently in the New York Observer has also talked about that. You can find the article, the links to the article in our underneath the program, underneath the video on YouTube and our channels. So we highly recommend that you go and read the entire article. It's very well written. And there was also a tweet from Mr. Schindler, who is, by the way, those of you who don't know him, he's a former NSA analyst, a former counterintelligence officer, and also a Navy officer. A tweet that he have posted that talks about sort of how a Smolensk catastrophe would look like from a U.S. An American perspective of a average American. So it's something, I'm not quoting his tweet, but I want to give you maybe like also a slightly extended idea of how things, what happened basically after the crash. So if you can imagine that you're Donald Trump, the First Lady, the top brass of U.S. Army, top political and social influential academia elites, have died in the Air Force One crash, let's say in China or maybe North Korea, and then after that there would be like a joint investigation by I don't know, North Korea or maybe Chinese communist regime, and they would state that the crash occurred. I get this, that it occurred because the Air Force One have collided with the top of a tree. A birch tree, and that tree eventually you find out that the tree is like 50 meters high. So your Air Force One crashed into the tree broke Air Force One's wing, and then
stupid idea.
Yeah, and then let's say the Chinese or the North Koreans would say that they would give you the black boxes, and then suddenly you find out that the black boxes were opened. And you would discover 8 years later there's still no access to the remains of the plane. It's still somewhere sitting in China or in North Korea. And the bodies of of the president and the first lady and the American elite would arrive basically locked up in coffins, in metal coffins, welded shut. And just to add maybe to like the vivid imagination, just to illustrate it, imagine the takeover of the government after Donald Trump, and you know the president, first lady would die. Somehow not the vice president Mike Pence, but maybe imagine like Hillary Clinton, or somebody along the lines of Hillary Clinton would take power, because that would be like a similar description, right, to what happened.
Yeah.
So she would take power, she would, you know, assume government, and the bodies that will arrive in the coffins would be just buried without opening you know, the coffins. I mean, that's just in itself. It's I don't think anybody can even, like, you know, imagine something like that. So you would bury your president and the first lady in those closed coffins that China or North Korea sent to you. There will be no autopsies, no investigation. The Chinese or North Korean government would do like a joint investigation with Hillary Clinton and announce those, you know, those things. What else? Imagine maybe like the site where the crash happened would be covered with concrete, and on that concrete they would build a massive big mall. Let's say people would get fed up with Hillary, and then they would say, okay, we want somebody else. So eventually a new candidate will come. Maybe like, I think George Bush fits the bill here for, you know, for Kaczynski. He would come on parading on the, you know, on the campaign that he's gonna finally get to the bottom of this, what happened in, you know, in that crash. And then at the end of his, or like during his term, let's say he have a really good Secretary of Defense, like Mattis or something, and he would be like a, you know, really good secretary. He would do a lot towards this investigation, and then he would get, in midterm, he would get fired, and somebody else would take his place. What else? There will only be like a temporary, instead of getting anybody prosecuted, there will be nobody prosecuted, no punishment, and you would just get like a temporary statue. And then before we go into our petition, so imagine a small group of patriots, yeah, out of all US, only about 1/4% would start, let's say, a petition, because we can't say that you start a petition to Donald Trump, but let's say you start some campaign to get to the bottom of this. And well, maybe we'll get to that in a moment. But just, do you want to comment maybe what we've covered so far, or maybe Olgierd? I think maybe I'll ask you. What do you think, you as an American, imagining this kind of events? Would you think any American, either left or right, Democrat or Republican, do you think any American would settle down for this?
This is unimaginable. Absolutely, this is a crime perpetuated on our president and our top brass. This wouldn't be a left for just nothing, no investigation like it was here. So let's come back to reality, to that Polish situation, and see what the government did, and what the group of Polish patriots who started the petition, because everybody sees that government did nothing to explain this horrible tragedy. So finally, the time came for the action for the patriots, and thanks to the initiative of Pastor Chojecki, of this petition to President of the United States, Donald Trump, was directed to the government's office, which is the only chance to get to the bottom of this tragedy, and the only and the powerful leader of the world, of the free world, President Donald Trump, could do that. And so we directed, I mean, Polish people, and directed that petition to the American government, personally to Donald Trump, President Donald Trump. And in order to get this whole matter to the attention of President, there is a need to could get 100,000 signatures under that petition. And it was 30 days to get that number of the signatures collected. And everybody in the Polish government and Polish media, journalists, didn't really like that initiative and didn't wish to get that 100,000 signatures under the petition. So they kept silent about this. There was no words in the media, in the television, and the newspapers. And regardless of that, finally, when the term of the signatures to be, the term to finish the signatures under this petition came, it was collected 99,000 signatures on it, with total silence in the Polish media and no support from the political system in Poland and political power, which is in the hands of the contemporary government here.
If I can just interrupt you there. I want to get to that towards like later. Okay. I want to build up the tension, right. So we don't want to give up all the.
I would like go on in your fantasies to imagine.
Nightmare, more like a nightmare.
Yes, to imagine what's a horrible situation we have in Poland. Please imagine that after a few years, 5 years later, son of Mr. President Trump would won the election, and he's a president of United States, and all he would do to this tragedy is to build a monument, a small monument in Washington, D.C., and there is no investigation, no persecution, no judge, no justice. No justice, only a monument. So it's something incredible, and plus the son of the United States president will throw out advisor which was responsible to carry the investigation on technical matters. The same made brother of President Lech Kaczyński, Jarosław Kaczyński, who his party took power almost 3 years ago and did nothing to judge these murders of his brother. And few months ago, he threw out Minister Macierewicz, Minister of Defense, which was responsible to carry this investigation. So it's the reasons that we decide to make this petition to President of United States, President of the free world.
Yeah, one of our first programs talk about the fact that Macierewicz have been thrown out of the office, and we explain about that. So if you want to go to our channel and find that program, it was I think it was the first program we've done with Marian Kowalski as well, president of November 11th movement.
And we can add to your nightmare that our Polish parliament then in 2010 voted that the investigation need to be conducted by Putin, by Russians, and nobody from the former parliament, former government, PO-PSL, was convicted or judged and it's just some kind of investigation, but there are personal, not public investigations. And there is something we need to say, that our petitions to petition Donald Trump was not against Minister Macierewicz, but we want to help him and support him, because he's the only person, I think, on the top who really want the truth about Smolensk catastrophe, and what is more, he supported our petition because there was a question in the television program about our petition, and he said, yes, I do recommend it, and every action to solve show the truth about Smolensk is right.
Mm-hmm. Pastor Paweł, I want to ask you, can you give us, the viewers who don't normally watch us, or to our new viewers that are just joining our channel, a really like a bird's eye overview, what is called, of how come the current political, let's call them elites, are behaving this way? What's the reason for that? We can take it maybe from the round table. We don't have to go far back into the Second World War.
And the round table was a show to deceive Polish people and Western people that the communist in Poland is finished. It was not finished, but only changed. Communists make new suits. They are now businessmen. They are now Democrats, politicians, democratic politicians, not murderers, not terrorists, not communist crimers or something on. There was no judge, no
prosecution.
Yes, no consequences.
No trial.
No trials. There was a lot of murders, a lot of years with pain of our nation. Olgierd is one of people who need to flee from Poland to have normal life, and now nobody was punished for communist time in Poland, and the Polish elite was made on the foundation of a very big lie. And the kind of people which are now in Polish elite are very unloyal to our nation and to our heroes, which were murdered, persecuted during communist time. They are loyal to Germany or to Russia, because they have power and they have money and they pay them or treat them. So it's cowards and people morally corrupted. So the deeds of our elite is the best testimony of their moral condition. And we can then follow up with what happened after the 8 years when we got the monument and not any trials or any prosecutions. So the Polish Poles basically felt betrayed. So if you come back actually to an example of how it might look like in US, so imagine a small community, even much smaller than the Tea Party, really you know, conservative patriots, Christians, biblical Christians, decided to start a campaign, to launch a petition, or some sort of action like that to raise the awareness, to actually not just raise the awareness, but actually to call for action, call for investigation, international investigation, independent investigation into what happened, and this action
which the people behind it actually, if you translate the ratios of let's say our community to the US, I would say it's something like 1/4%. I counted around like you know, I'm talking about the actual signatures. Yeah, that's not even the size of the community. The size of the community of, you know, of each patroning going against the Thai TV. I think we can estimate it in 1 or a couple of thousand viewers, with less than 1,000 the ones that actually dedicated. And if you're talking about you know, the actual people who do that,
our fight is very similar to the David and Goliath fight. So we are very weak in the men standards, but God is on our behalf. So we are very eager in this fight, and we know that we stand on truth. So we will win, but it's only matter when.
Yeah.
So can you imagine, the star viewers, that a small community like that is actually even much less than the 1/4%. So let's say, yeah, so much less than that would start a petition like that, would start a campaign like that, and imagine that all your media, all the major outlets as well as smaller outlets, definitely not the liberal left, but especially the so-called patriotic, conservative, you know, press or media, would not only ignore the entire initiative for most of the duration of its existence, which is about a month. They even conspired and done all they could to avoid it. We know that for sure, because we know that they, our viewers were, you can say, harassing them on Twitter and other you know, social media platforms. We saw tweets of them saying that wherever I go, I get the heretics, or I get the sectarian, you know, go against the Thai TV, chasing me everywhere, asking me if I've signed the petition or not. So you get all this, what some in US call the ene-media.
Maybe it's important to say that in Poland, to be evangelical Christian is to be a sectarian or heretic people. So, because most of this media and authorities are Catholics, so they call such offensive words for us to pretend Poles to change their mind about the Bible and Jesus Christ.
Yeah, for example, Michael Pence, Vice President of the United States, will be a sectarian in Polish Catholic
media.
Yeah, maybe even Donald Trump, and maybe other.
It's difficult. I think for Americans, it's difficult to imagine such kind of situation. So we try to help you understand that. Yeah,
and this is the reason why I want to do this program, to actually help you visualize what's been going on here. So, Olgierd, I'll come back to you, because you started mentioning the you know, the petition, the lack of exposure in the media. So just to make sure we got this correctly. So everything from CNN down to like the smallest outlets, with an exception of maybe, well, we can count them on one hand, and we have hundreds of them. So imagine the same, like just multiply that to the US scale. So imagine you would have this kind of catastrophe, a crash like that in US, and not a single outlet essentially mentioned the initiative, comment on it, or you know, ask their viewers to sign it, or even inform, you know, not even ask them to sign it, just give the information out and say, look, this is the initiative, make up your own mind. If you want to sign it, if you don't. But so how would an American see a total blackout on this kind of initiative. It's not just any initiative. It's like we have to remember that it's the president, the first lady, and the top brass of the military and elite that died. So, what would an American say about that?
Well, this is impossible completely to see that nobody will mention about it. This is a gigantic political and moral issue. So Americans would not keep silent about this. Absolutely. Politicians will be eliminated from the political life if they would say nothing about it or even try to deny that something like that happened. That was a different kind of scenario. When we know now that this plane was falling apart in the air, there is a proof already that has been documented and showed, actually, unfortunately, not showed on the Polish television to the full extent. Just mentioned maybe in some kind of a dark corner. So this is horrible thing what's happening here, and that's why this initiative of this small group got 100,000 signatures. So, which means that it matters for Polish people. Yeah. It doesn't matter for political leadership, so-called, quote-unquote. It's not a leadership, it's a disaster. And on the moral side of this is also, it's horrible to pretend that nothing happened or that this is a kind of the mistake made by the Polish pilots, which is totally false and untrue. It was explosion in the air. This airplane exploded not because of some mysterious happening. Those charges have to be planted somewhere. And we know that this plane was serviced in Samara, in Russia, in the middle of Russia.
So that would be like a Air Force One serviced in China.
Yeah. So this is
but
horrible thing.
It's the end of this history of this petition is something funny and sad in one time, because when we lost, when we have 99,000, not 100,000. Many of this media, which was silent during our fight, they make a success that we lost. So it's impossible to understand how it is. It is impossible that the same nation. The people which calls themselves patriots are happy that such initiative not success. So it's horrible.
Yeah. So they basically they were silent up until the last day. Yeah. Some of them gave steam on the last day and editor Kaltenberg on the public Polish television was strongly asking his guests, which there were all the guests apart from Marian Kowalski, who he could easily invite. He had the numbers to him and contacts and everything. So there are all these other clowns sitting in the studio, and editor Kaltenberg was hardline questioning them, will you support the petition, stuff. But that was on the last day. So after that, after the petition did not succeed, suddenly, all of a sudden, all these media know everything about this petition. They started, publishing articles, how it didn't succeed and how it was wrong, etc., etc. But they were silent up until now. So, Pastor Paweł, why do you think, in your eyes, why do these people behave like that?
I think that they are not true elite, but some kind of workers as elite. So they have place when they can go and they know that there are some borders of the freedom of speech. So it's very similar to a dog with a chain, and they only go as long as the chain allows them. So it's a Polish elite in media and in government, in political parties, which now have power in Poland. So Poland now isn't a free country, it's a hybrid which has a communist in real power and some puppets which play a role of president, prime minister, parliament members, and so on. And the same is in media world.
Do you think? Yeah.
As you said, that Polish public television didn't broadcast Minister Macierewicz report about Smolensk catastrophe. Some leftist television broadcast this, but our public Polish television didn't.
Which is owned by PiS.
Yeah.
By the PiS.
Yeah, and Macierewicz is in PiS, in this party. And he was the Minister of Defense, and we need to add that there was a reshuffle in Polish government, and Minister Macierewicz was thrown out from this, and Prime Minister Beata Szydło also, and there is no really patriot member of this government now, and this is so-called patriotic and conservative, but it is not, because of this change in 5 or 3 months ago.
I said some things about our elite, but in this context we need to say something bad about, but true, about our nation. What normal nation would agree with such situation, that they vote for a cabinet of Prime Minister Beata Szydło, Minister Macierewicz, and so on, and after 2 years, with any cause, someone threw out these people and pick up unknown people without of democratic procedure.
From the former government.
Yes. Unknown to the most.
Yes.
Unknown to the lazy who don't want to check Wikipedia.
But Americans, I think, start to protest. No, we choose someone else, not this one president or prime minister, but our nation, which is led by such media and spiritual authorities, said quite nothing. There was no protests besides our protests in our television and our people. So it's something strange that the Polish nation is so passive in political matters.
Our Prime Minister now is a former advisor of Donald Tusk, who is one of the most responsible for Smolensk catastrophe.
Yeah.
So that's the Polish government now.
And just one more thing I want to mention as well is that why, I mean, this petition might not look so important to people in US, because you probably have other options apart from this petition, direct pressure on your representatives, etc., etc., and even like special lobbying groups that represent specific interests. But in Poland, you have to understand that things don't work the same as US at all. And the reason why we launched the petition to President of the United States is because we view him as our last hope, as the representative of the free world. So that's why we've started with this petition. And just so I can communicate to the viewers the scale of what could have been done to actually get this petition to 100,000, from Pastor Paweł, from your knowledge of these such such media outlets like Radio Maria, which is like the biggest Catholic sort of so-called, used to be independent, but now we know it's heavily dependent on government funds, or Polish Gazeta Polska, or any of such so-called by their own declaration patriotic outlets. So what we were missing 1,000 signatures. By your estimations, if any one of those outlets would even like publicly on primetime TV or radio or publications would support this petition, how fast do you think we would be able to collect those 1,000 missing signatures?
I think that in normal conditions, it was a week for 100,000 of these signatures. So
using our own resources and reach.
We are very thankful to all of you from United States and all over the world which are not, you are not Poles, but you stand arm to arm with us with this matter, and I'm very grateful to Mr. Schindler for this article which you mentioned on the beginning of our program. The theses of this article are the same as in our petition, so we lost in collecting these signatures, but 3 days after, we have on the United States media the matter for which we fight for.
And this is just the beginning.
Praise the Lord.
And just to come back to my question, so let's say Radio Maria or Gazeta Polska or Niezależna or TV Republika, which is also peace funded. If they were to mention on prime time, or even not on prime time, just somewhere in their news, we know TV Republika has the English now news.
They mentioned the last day.
The last day, a few hours.
Yeah. So if they would mention that during the petition, not in the end, in the last day, how fast do you think we would have?
1 week. I said 1 week.
Oh,
I think
1 week.
Yes,
okay.
It would be in this such difficult condition. There was a week when we got 50,000 of almost 50,000 of these signatures. 8,000 per day. One day, I think 10,000 in 1 day.
Yeah.
Without of help of this big television, newspapers, media.
But what I'm saying is, if on top of our efforts, Radio Maria or outlet like that, just one of them would mention, I think from what I suspect, it would be like a day. I think you mentioned it as well on the program, that if at least one outlet would just mention that we have the petition, it's like I think even within a couple of hours we would have like an outflow of, of several hundreds or even thousands signatures.
Yes, of course. There was some problems in this White House petition too, because for 1 day it was closed.
Yeah.
We didn't know why it was closed. There was some days we thought that the signature are blocked because there was no progress in that, and the next day there was a very big progress. So very strange things was happened during this month.
And we have an article about that, summarizing some of the strange procedures that were happening during our petition on our Ruch 11 website, which we'll add to the description as well. So
I think that this initiative was very dangerous to Russia, that's your pronunciation, and to this Polish corrupted elite. So it's the matter why they was silent about that. And another factor is that we are, as a biblical Christian, something new. and in our social life. And the Catholics elite is very very threatened by to jealous to lose their monopoly in the sphere of mental control of Polish people. So they fight with us so brutally.
Mm-hmm. Is there any hope, would you say, if you would were to speak or address Donald Trump and his administration, is there any hope of somehow for this elite to change to something better, or do you think it's in Poland we just have to start from basically from new and not add new wine to the old old vessels?
From the Bible we know that corruptive heart is possible to repair only by Jesus Christ, his
bloodshed,
his blood shed on the cross, and this Polish elite are very very not interested in the true gospel and the Bible. They are very very hypocrite in their religion life. So I don't think that many of them are in position to repent, sincerely repent to Jesus Christ. So during our mega church project, we try to rise a new elite, a new Christian biblical elite with new heart, which show the whole nation what does it mean to be elite. It's not to have power, it's not to have corruptive money, it's to be an example, to be a leader, to be a vision maker, not only to sit and to rule and going to nowhere.
To be a good servant of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Amen.
So I think we'll finish for today. Is there anything you want to add? Any views in terms of this? This discussion. I would myself actually want to mention the movie Katyń, Last Witness, which we all I think saw by now. Yeah. And I think we can highly recommend it. It was very well done. The director is Piotr Szkopiak, who is Polish. Help me out because I'm not.
Diaspora.
But I mean, his background. His father was
his grandfather
was murdered in Katyń, and it's a very well made film. And what we especially liked is that finally the truth about Katyń, and unfortunately the cover-up by our allies, by UK and US during that time, that covered up the terrible crimes of Russia. So it's very well presented in there, and it amazed me that it took so long to have a proper movie made where it was clearly communicated that these were not just the crimes of the Russians, but also what Ambassador Bliss-Lane was speaking about, that when you shut the eye and you don't mention and bring out the crimes of when you turn blind eye to the communism, he's going to come back and win, and then he's going to take away our freedoms. So it's if it took so long, it's I actually counted it's like 78 years, because we finally have a movie just now about this topic. So what we urge all our Polish, the Poles in diaspora, the Poles in US, you have to take action about this. You have to make people aware of the problem with Smolensk, because what we see in Smolensk is exactly what happened in Katyń. The attempt to cover this up, because it's not, it's not, the issue is problematic, and we don't want another Katyń happen, for Smolensk.
And the silence of Russia crime in Katyń by Western powers 70, 60 years ago made possible the another crimes of Russia. And today's crimes of Putin are the harvest of silent the Katyń tragedy, Katyń crime in 30s or 50s last century. So please don't do the same mistake again.
But the optimistic thing is that John Schindler in the New York Observer, as you mentioned, he actually writes about all these things we are talking about today, about joining Katyń massacre and Smolensk catastrophe. And one day after closing our petition, because we closed I think May 14th, and this article by Schindler was published May 15th, and he said openly that there needs to be an international investigation into Smolensk plane crash, and he said that it needs to be done by Western and by independent third power, not Russia, not even Poland, because Poland, as he mentioned, is throughout Mr. Antoni Macierewicz from the government, and he mentioned, for example, Professor Frank Taylor, a British investigator, veteran, British air crash. So he's not conspiracy theory expert, but a real professional expert who said that it was explosion which caused Smolensk catastrophe. And it's not so just Antoni Macierewicz, who is supposed to be in Poland as a, I don't know, psycho or somebody, but this is real report which need to be considered by the world. And that's the optimistic thing.
Yeah, and one more thing to mention as well is that we still didn't have anybody punished for Katyń. There was no prosecutions as well. And it looked like 8 years into the Smolensk catastrophe, we're going in the same direction. So we need US and we need our allies to stand with us and actually, just like John Schindler done here, stand for truth and you know, not be afraid to point out that things are not right.
And now with President Trump is possible. This is the window of history, as we said in Poland. Yeah.
So we pray.
It is important to cut this thing to the bone.
Yeah.
50 years Russia was lying about Katyń massacre, and they were saying that Germans did it. Germans are not the innocent babies, but they did some other crimes, but not this one. This was a Russians' crime. And 50 years it took until finally they acknowledged that they did it. So we don't want to wait now for another 50 years that this thing in Smolensk, that tragedy, will be finally acknowledged in some next 2 generations. This has to be done quickly, and we should get the truth out of all this evidence, which is already massive collected evidence that shows that it was a crime. This plane was destroyed by explosions in the air. And those explosions, as we know, didn't come from St. Nicholas and some reindeers who brought those charges into that plane. So that's why we really urged anybody who can help to solve this crime, and the only person that has power and has proven that he is standing for the truth.
And
As President Donald Trump. That's why this petition has been directed to him. And
it's important that now the free world is in a fight with Russia, China, Iran, and we call it communist or post-communist countries. And from Polish perspective, the Russia and Germany are equal in crimes during last war. Fascism and communism is the same in crimes. Maybe communism is more dangerous than Hitlerism. And the Western powers after the war said that communism is not so dangerous. And General Patton said that maybe we has a victory on Germany, but the worst enemy is still alive. So don't do the same mistake again.
I think we'll finish for today. Our viewers have a lot to take on and think through. Thank you very much for joining me today. Our guests today were Editor-in-Chief of Go Against State News TV, Pastor Paweł Chojecki, Olgierd Kaltenberg, our guest and friend from the US.
my pleasure to be here.
And Pastor's daughter, Eunika Chojecka.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you on our next program.